Okay, Dave Jennings here. I just wanted to make a short video to answer the question, is Ed Dale Dave approved? Now, to do that, I'll tell you a little bit of a story and my background with Ed. I've had a little bit of a past with Ed, and we've been in touch and crossed paths for quite some time, many years, and I've made a few notes here just to make sure that I touch on all of those. I think I first got to know Ed, now I can't even remember how many years it was, but it's got to be well over 5 years ago now. In fact, it might even be closer to 7. I first came across Ed. I'd just gotten back from a workshop called the Billionaire in Training Boot Camp, and it was up in Brisbane, put on by a guy called Brad Sugars. Now, one of the guys I met there, his name was Linus, and Linus was reading this book. It was called something like The Internet Cash Flow Machine or something like that, and it was written by Ed Dale and Eugene Ware as well. Now, what it was actually the first stage in the Underachiever. Now, if you've been following Ed Dale stuff for a while, he actually came up with a method called the Underachiever method, and he did it with Frank Kern. Now, prior to that, though, he had this book that he'd done with Eugene, and that was the book that I first came across. It really was, at the time, very much cutting edge, all about how to put up flycatcher pages, ask people questions in different niches about what it is that they'd like to know about that certain niche or topic, and then he would go ahead and create a book based around, the questions that people were asking in that niche. That went on to evolve into the Underachiever method, and then he joined up with Frank Kern, who was doing something very similar, and they created a whole series of different things came out from that meeting. They had a fantastic newsletter, they created the DVDs, they had a workshop with John Reese here in Melbourne as well. Now, I'd sort of come across Ed's stuff at that point, but then I kept an eye out. There was another event that Brett McFall had put on here in Melbourne. It was down in St Kilda, and Ed had come to talk about his method there, and I kind of just said hello. I actually got a photo of him, and I've still got that floating around. You can probably find it on my Facebook with Ed, and it looks like it was probably taken 10 years ago. It was way back in the early days when I first came across Ed's stuff and watched that presentation. Now, from there, I kind of kept in touch, and I knew Ed was into buying and selling websites and buying and selling businesses, and he'd done it. Now, in our own business, we had a rock and roll clothing music store. It was called Stars and Stripes on Bridge Road, and we were coming up to wanting to sell that business, and I thought, well, I might as well get in touch with Ed and see if he had any suggestions. And his suggestion was to go ahead and advertise in Beat magazine, which we did, and we ultimately ended up selling that business. As a thank you gift, I sent Ed a t-shirt. It was a My Chemical Romance t-shirt, because at the time they were just sort of breaking, and he said he liked that, so I went ahead and sent that off to him. But from there, I kind of crossed paths a few times, attended his different workshops here and there, and I think one of the best workshops that I've ever attended was the Beechworth conference that Ed ran. It was I think maybe a 3-day event up in Beechworth in Victoria, and it was held. I think it must have been like a prison or something like that, and they'd converted it into some accommodation, and they had these little rooms. I remember it quite vividly, but because the tickets were actually $5,000, and at the time, I mean, that was a lot of money for a lot of people, and I think what it did was it really culled a lot of people who weren't quite serious, and it only really got the serious players, and really sort of rubbed shoulders. I actually drove up in the car with Pete Williams, who, I've got quite a story with Pete as well, with everything that we did with the MCG, and rode up with him, but then met Kenny and met the guys, Dan and Mark from PLR Pro, and met the Donald, met so many people were at that event, and they were just high-level players, so it was great to mastermind. That was probably one of the better events that I've been to. After that, as I said, Ed's had a few different conferences. He had one here in Melbourne called The Challenge, and he asked me to speak at that to share about some of the different things that we were doing when it comes to outsourcing. The way that we were managing our team is definitely something very, very unique. Again, if you want to watch that presentation, just go ahead and email support, and we can make sure that you can get a link through to that presentation. From there, I've been quite lucky, just having dinners with Ed every now and then and catching up. And I mean, he's very nice to me. He speaks very kindly, and at different events, I've heard him even just recently at the Fast Web Formula 3. He'd mentioned my name and said some nice things. So I've only had very good experience when it comes to Ed Dale. So what makes Ed Dale stand out from the pack? Well, he really is on the cutting edge. I think it feels like he's got his finger on the pulse, and it must be the way that he's connected. He's a very good networker, and he's involved in a lot of different circles, and I think that's one of the reasons that he's able to stay on top of it. Not only that, the way that he just consumes data as well. He loves to consume, and he was actually one of the first guys who showed me how to use RSS readers effectively to just keep on top of current trends and what's actually going on. So there are a couple of the reasons why Ed is so successful. He's a great talker. I think he's got a heart of gold. His heart's in the right place, and he really does genuinely want to help people move through to the next level. And you see that with everything that he's doing with the challenge. It's all about giving back and making sure that he can help people move to the next level. So to cut a long story short, yes, Ed Dale is Dave approved.